This is season number 9 for Dave Roberts with the Dodgers. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
Reparations Now has been a rallying cry in this country and around the world for decades. But the demand has taken on new urgency with growing momentum on the issue led by the state of California, which has completed an extensive study and put forth recommendations to enact reparations. California's reparations actions have huge nationwide implications. The California Task Force was the first of its kind in the nation, and the states of New York and Colorado recently voted to take on the issue. Dozens of cities from coast to coast, including San Francisco, Boston, Los Angeles, and Detroit, have started their own reparations commissions. One of the first known reparationists was Callie House, who toured the nation advocating for reparations in the 1890s. But never in this nation's history has the movement to heal the harms of enslavement, institutionalized racism, and the system of white supremacy seemed so strong. The topic remains untouchable for most elected officials, and the call for reparations has not yet garnered widespread public support. Polling shows that most Californians agree that black fellow citizens are still suffering from the damage done by slavery and Jim Crow, but they still do not support cash reparations. The California Legislative Black Caucus has introduced a package of proposals for bills that do not include 1 penny of cash compensation, restitution, or repair. Governor Newsom and other lawmakers have distanced themselves from the concept of cash payments. While Newsom is right, cash alone will not repair our collective harm, the state's goofy legislative package ignoring monetary payments is disingenuous. California lawmakers need to step up and put a reparations bill for cash payments on the table. The issue of how it is funded, the timeline, or whether it impacts our current budget challenges can be addressed. But we must strike while the iron is hot, or the window of opportunity will pass us by. If you agree that it's time for our lawmakers to add a bill enacting cash payments to their lineup, call them at 916-319-3868 and say, if it doesn't include cash, it ain't reparations. That's 916-319-3868. Tell them Callie House sent you. From Bruce's Beach to the California Task Force, the Golden State is a trailblazer when it comes to reparations. The world is watching. We must rise to the historical moment and set a precedent for cash payments along with legislative remedies and policies addressing the systemic badges of slavery and Jim Crow. We must insist on measures significant enough to help close the racial wealth gap. California must stand for cash, and the time for reparations is now. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dominique DePrima. We welcome your comments.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavisSmileyShow.com. That's thetavisSmileyShow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, historian Tim Naftali joins us live in studio to unpack the lasting impact of the Watergate scandal 50 years after President Richard Nixon's unprecedented resignation. In our third hour, two more conversations. Up first, labor is still on a roll, racking up victories. This week, the largest hotel worker strike in modern history was settled, represented by United Here Local 11. More than 10,000 members picketed against 53 hotels more than 160 times. And in the end, they won. As we say around here, when we fight, we win. In the end, L.A. County hotel workers secured 40 to 50% raises for themselves and low-cost health care. I ain't mad at them. That's a big deal for everyday people servicing us in the hotels that we choose to stay in. And so at the top of hour three, we will reprise our conversation with America's best-known contemporary labor leader, Shawn Fain of the UAW, who championed the successful fight against the big three Detroit automakers. I ain't mad at labor, having a year and some. Still winning these fights. They found their spine, it seems, in 2023, and they are not slowing down. Congratulations to those hotel workers who pulled off the most successful major strike in modern history for hotel workers. That at the top of hour three. On the backside of hour three, media executive Neil Nelson introduces us to Desta. Desta, a new streaming platform committed to amplifying black stories and voices. But in this first hour, two more conversations. Yeah, one of those days, we're going to try to squeeze an 80-pound show into a 40-pound bag. On the B side of this hour, Israel-Hamas. The war rages on despite that UN ceasefire demand. Columbia professor and author Rashid Khalidi joins us to discuss the real-world impact, or not, of the UN ceasefire resolution. But we commence today's show talking politics with Dr. Michael Fauntroy, founding director of the Race, Politics, and Policy Center at George Mason University. Michael Fauntroy, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Hope you are too.
Man, doing the best I can, Let me just say right quick, I saw the other day the Shirley documentary. I don't know if have you seen it yet?
No, but I had somebody pull me aside and tell me about it.
I want to talk to you about that, just briefly. I saw the Shirley documentary about the life of Shirley Chisholm. I've never said this before. It ain't no secret. We're friends and frat brothers. Yo, Michael Fauntroy. But Michael Fauntroy, that last name may ring a bell. Fauntroy, his uncle is Walter Fauntroy, the longtime great congressman representing the delegate representing the District of Columbia. That is his uncle, Walter Fauntroy. And Walter Fauntroy is portrayed in this Shirley movie in a way that I found rather interesting. Of course, Shirley is played by the great actress Regina King. And so we'll talk just briefly about that movie and the way his uncle is portrayed in the film. He hasn't seen it yet, but I just want to share a bit about that. And, of course, there's all kind of breaking news. We will start in a moment a conversation talking about the passing of Joe Lieberman. And I've got my own thoughts about Lieberman. We'll take Michael Fauntroy's thoughts about Lieberman. But I guess one of the questions is whether, with his death, does this attempt to find a candidate for the No Labels Party, an independent party that he was pushing, does that die as well? We'll talk about that. It's day two. And Trump's numbers for his NASDAQ traded Truth Social are continuing to rise, adding billions of more dollars to his net worth. Big story out today that Donald Trump has now spent more than $100 million, more than $100 million already on legal bills. And more news today, the Republican National Committee is asking all new hires, all potential new hires, do you believe that Joe Biden won the election in 2020? That is literally one of their questions on the application, in the interview, to be hired at the RNC. I guess you could expect that, given that his daughter-in-law is now one of the three persons leading the RNC. A lot to talk about with Michael Fauntroy when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos, and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit-on-the-go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
Pizza's here.
Oh, great. I'd love some, but I'm worried about my stomach issues.
If you're worried about having diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose, oily stools, it may not just be stomach issues. It could be a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and talk to your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can it keep me warm when I'm cold?
Wait, no, I'm always hot.
Sleep Number does that. The Climate 360 smart bed actively cools or warms up to 13 degrees on either side for your ideal sleep temperature. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. JD Power ranks Sleep Number #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in-store. And now save $1,000 on our most popular Sleep Number smart bed. End Saturday. For JD Power 2023 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
So you just used bug spray in your home. Now what? Well, between the waiting and waiting for things to dry up and keeping your family away from the mess, it hits you. You could have used Zevo. Unlike other bug sprays that stick around, Zevo goes from kill to clean in seconds. Plus, it's safe for use around people and pets when used as directed. Zevo, people-friendly, bug-deadly.
Tax Talk with Straight Talk.
You give and you give. This tax season, you get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get a reliable 5G network and unlimited data and a new Samsung Galaxy A15 for just $99. So you can give your janky phone to your kid. Yeah! Good talk.
Switch to Straight Talk for plans starting as low as $25 a line per month for 4 lines. Find us at Walmart and StraightTalk.com. For network management practices, visit StraightTalk.com. Device offer ends 4/14/24. In-store activation on single Silver Unlimited plan or higher required. Family plan discount with 4 lines all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Taxes and fees apply.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
More of Tavis Smiley and Dr. Michael Fauntroy, who again is the founding director of the Race, Politics, and Policy Center at George Mason University, and I'm delighted to have him on this program. We'll get to that documentary, the film called Shirley, starring Regina King, and the treatment of one Walter Fauntroy, the longtime delegate from D.C., who's Michael's uncle. And for that matter, Michael Rondellam. You've not seen the film. I've seen it. I'll tell you about it. But it's a little tricky when it comes to your uncle and Rondellam's, and I'll share a bit of that before we wrap this conversation with you. Let me start, though, with the big news of the day. Joe Lieberman passed away yesterday at the age of 82. Of course, we all recall Joe Lieberman as Al Gore's running mate. I'm still mad at Al Gore all these years later, Michael. I'm just going to be honest about it. I'm still mad at Al Gore all these years later because I think they completely just mishandled how they should have gone about this recount, allowing the Supreme Court to anoint George W. Bush as president of these United States. So I ain't got a whole lot of love for Al Gore these days, although I like him as a person. I just think they completely messed that thing up. And if I had time, I'd get into all the details. There's a book coming out about that, written by a major reporter for Politico. I sat for a conversation with him a few weeks ago for a few hours, talking about this and the mistakes I think they made that allowed the Supreme Court again to give George Bush that victory, as it were. I'm putting victory in air quotes. But your thoughts about Joe Lieberman, and specifically whether or not, given this effort that he was at the forefront of, pushing for a party called No Labels to find its own independent candidate. As you recall, they were going after Joe Manchin out of West Virginia. He passed and decided not to take that opportunity. Others, we are told in reporting, have passed on that as well. But a little strange that Joe Lieberman, a former Democrat, again, was out there pushing for an independent candidate to run against his longtime friend Joe Biden.
Yeah, so let me just mention quickly, though, Tavis, elections have consequences, and that 2000 election is still reverberating today.
Oh, yeah.
One of the lawyers who was arguing on behalf of the RNC is now on the U.S. Supreme Court and would not have been on the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm talking about Brett Kavanaugh. In fact, for that matter, John Roberts, but for the outcome of that election. So elections have consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Lieberman with the No Labels operation, generally speaking, Lieberman, in my view, is somebody who's going to be looked at through a mixed prism. You know, he blocked single-payer health care when that was where many Democrats in the country wanted to go, and he was he was accused of doing that on behalf of Connecticut insurers who were operating all across the country. So, you know, the fight to get to Obamacare was impacted in part because of the thought that Lieberman and others had that single payer was a big problem. And I, for one, certainly disagree with that. The 2000 election, the sort of moderate to conservative democratic politics certainly impacted national politics. And then late in his life, of course, he pops up with this No Labels operation, trying to find somebody who would walk a middle path. Even Joe Manchin looked at it and said, if I do this, I'm effectively giving the race to Donald Trump, and that's untenable. And so for those No Labels people, they should know that those of us who are paying attention to this it's more than fair for us to wonder, are you really in this to get Donald Trump back in the White House, or are you really trying to find a third lane, if you will, in American politics? Our system is not set up for an effective third party, and to try to launch that now, to me, seems to be really problematic, and I'll close on this quick point. If you really want to grow a third party in America, you got to start at the grassroots and go up, not start at the presidency and try to work down.
Yep. Now, that's a powerful point, and most people don't make that point. I receive it, and I accept it, and frankly, I agree with it. That's how you have to build it from the ground up. Having said that, your friend and my friend Cornel West running as an independent candidate, as are others. But I see Dr. West and his candidacy a little bit different than what Joe Lieberman was trying to do at No Labels. And here's my only point: that Joe Lieberman was not just a longtime Democrat, not just a leader of his party, but this guy was on the ticket to be president on the Democratic ticket, to then turn around and to try to set up an independent party to run against your, again, air quotes, longtime friend, Joe Biden, and potentially hand the election to Donald Trump. Makes me feel the same way you feel, that he's going to be looked at through a mixed prism, to use your phrase, in the years to come. That was just a bit strange to me. I mean, Joe Lieberman was always a little quirky. You and I both know that. But again, to have served all those years in the Senate with Joe Biden, and then to be trying to set up a third-party candidate to run against this guy and potentially hand the victory to Donald Trump is a weird thing to do for a guy who was the nominee of the party to be vice president. I digress on that for now. Let me move on watching my time here.
And Tavis,
sure.
Tavis, real quick, though, and don't forget, Biden campaigned for Lieberman to be the vice president when he was supporting the ticket in 2000.
That is true.
So, I mean, this is borderline knife in the back stuff for me, from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I take it. That's why I said we agree. It's going to be a strange, I think, eulogy for Joe Lieberman in the days to come. But again, I digress on that for now. I raised this yesterday when the news broke. Of course, that Donald Trump, we already knew it was happening, but when his company DJT started trading publicly on the NASDAQ. One thing to see it make a bunch of money the first day, and again, it may fizzle out at some point, and I suspect it will. But the story right now is that that this company is trading quite nicely, and each day, again, we're only 2 or 3 days in, it keeps adding billions of dollars to Donald Trump's net worth. He could use that money right about now. Your thoughts on the fact that, again, whatever you think of this guy, I'm not going to say everything he touches turns to gold, because I don't believe that, but he is slippery like an eel.
Well, slippery for sure, but I will just tell you, if this stock growth operates as typical, he has a 6-month period where he's not able to sell any of the shares.
Right.
So the real story on this is going to be in 5 or 6 months to see where the stock is. If it's in the toilet, like I expect it will be, he's not going to make any money about that off of this. And all these headlines that we see right now will have faded away into the ether. So I just want to encourage everybody on this to say, look, it's all on paper now.
Mm-hmm.
He can't actually put his hands on it probably for 6 months based on stock trading rules for new listings. So I am not in any way sort of confident that it's going to end up in 6 months where it is right now.
Yeah. What do you make of the fact that his daughter-in-law, the one who's married to Eric Trump, Laura, is now one of the three persons leading the Republican National Committee? I mean, I've never seen anybody so brazen. First of all, you get elected and you hire your daughter and your son-in-law to work with you in the White House. And never mind, of course, we know that JFK chose RFK to be his attorney general, so this ain't the first time this has happened. And they were Democrats and the Trumps are Republicans, but so it happens on both sides. But you bring in your daughter and you bring in your son-in-law to work for you in the White House, and you get a bunch of pushback about that. But the next time around, they decide they're going to sit this out. So Jared and Ivanka are sitting this out. But now you bring in the wife of your other son, Eric, Laura, to be one of the, again, three persons running the RNC. And there are two things they do almost immediately. One of the things they do is to say that whatever money you're giving to the RNC first goes to the PAC. It goes to the PAC to help Donald Trump pay these legal bills that I'm tying a bunch of things in here together. Now shut up. It goes to the PAC to help pay his legal bills. And we now learn today, courtesy of a major investigative story, that he has spent, Donald Trump, over $100 million already on legal bills, and that number is going to climb significantly given all the cases, of course, that he's engaged in and involved in right about now. But on top of that, and I'll shut up, there's a story now today that the Republican National Committee has asked job candidates, Michael, whether they believe the 2020 election was stolen, which is weird, but another sign of Donald Trump's increasing grip on this party. I now digress and pass the mic to the gentleman from George Mason University.
Well, listen, I'm almost tempted to send in an application just to see if I can start up some trouble. So listen, none of this is a surprise. They telegraphed this long before Laura Trump took over the RNC. Mm-hmm. They want to take all of the money that's raised by the party and shift it over to the presidential campaign, and to the extent that they can move that to pay some legal bills, they would do that too. And if you are a down-ballot Republican in a competitive race that needs support from the national party, you now know that's not coming. And also that means, of course, that you're going to have a much more difficult time to win. So these Trump moves in the RNC are actually going to do existential damage to the party generally, because, as you know, political parties need money to fund candidates and develop strategy and do research and all of the kinds of things that political parties need to do to help their candidates win. Mm-hmm. But that's not happening here. And so they'll steal the money, because that's essentially what this is legalized theft. They just try to take the money and move it from one place to another. And we'll see where it lands. But I got to tell you, man, this is not a surprise. That is a corrupt operation taken over by people who can't accept the results of the 2020 election. And, it's a reflection of where that party is right now. It's sad to see, because we need two functioning parties, and at this point it looks like we only have one.
Yeah, it's this is a continuing story for me. We talked on Monday of this week, as everybody else has been talking, about the Ronna McDaniel mess at NBC. So yesterday, NBC announces they've completely cut ties with Ronna McDaniel, the former chair of the RNC. Ronna McDaniel gets pushed out of the RNC by Donald Trump to make room for his daughter-in-law to be part of the leadership there. But the stuff that Michael just lays out that we all knew was happening, and this is the worst-kept secret in Washington, for NBC to have plucked this particular woman who was running that operation at the time and think that they could make her a legitimate correspondent and not get a bunch of pushback was just the worst of blind spots, right? And it just blew up in their face. I don't know if you want to comment on that right quick. It's old news at this point, but I haven't heard your take on it.
Yeah, I do want to mention quickly, this is just such a disgraceful attempt to try to literally cleanse the reputation of somebody who is already sullied it beyond repair. Mm-hmm. I think all networks need to have some measure of balance, and if you feel that balance includes putting some pro-Trump voices on, so be it. I can live with it. But I don't think those voices should include people who deny the outcome of the 2020 election. And more specifically, the chair of the political party from which that person is coming. This is not some rank and file rando Republican activist running off at the mouth like this. This is the chair of the party. And to me, those people need to operate at a higher level of scrutiny. And for that reason, she should have never been brought in. And the fact that she was created a bunch of firestorm that didn't need to happen. She deserved it. The people who made those decisions to bring her in deserved it. And I'm hoping that we haven't heard the end of this from that standpoint. There needs to be an accounting and some accountability on the decision-making process here.
To that point, I just saw this story yesterday. You probably saw it as well. It's going to grow, I think. Marcus' point about somebody being held accountable for this horrible decision made by NBC News that they had to walk back. Story broke yesterday that there is a sister who was in the middle of making this decision, and that when she got involved, according to the story, the money for Ronna McDaniel in the contract went higher. That person is Rashida Jones. She's the president of MSNBC, and she is a black woman. Her name is Rashida Jones. She's the president of MSNBC, and I saw this story yesterday that went specifically for her. Now, you have to know she ain't the only one involved in this decision, but the story was specifically about her. I think you take my point. You ain't got to be a rocket scientist to see that Rashida is being set up. Now, to Michael's point.
Let me just add some quick context on that. Rashida and I are both graduates of Hampton University. She finished a few years after I did. I don't know her personally, but I know her reputation a little bit. Yeah. And I will tell you, as I understand it, she was not first to the post on this, and that I think you're right. She's being set up to take a lot of heat on this, even though she made it clear in a memo to staff that they had no plans of putting her on MSNBC. Yeah, no, I think Rashida is getting set up. Again, you heard it here first, but when you see a story following what happened, and the story is only about Rashida Jones, not the other white folk who were involved in this. This ain't my first rodeo. It ain't Michael's first rodeo. I'm just telling you, keep your eye on Rashida Jones. She may get sacrificed to this process. I got 90 seconds left. Again, you've not seen the film, so I want to ask you about it. I will ask you, have you talked to your uncle? Has your uncle put a statement out that I haven't seen? Because this movie, this film, Shirley, starring Regina King, does not do any justice to the legacy of your father, or your uncle rather, or Ron Dellums. So I have not spoken with him about this yet. I'm hoping to do that this weekend. Right. I will just tell you, I am very familiar with that history, though I didn't see how it was portrayed in the film. Yeah. You know, I got an uncle who's a civil rights legend. I spent my whole life sitting at his feet, asking him questions, taking in stories. And I would just refer everybody to William Clay's book, Just Permanent Interest, which came out about 15, 20 years ago, that documents the rise of the Congressional Black Caucus and black members of Congress. In that book is a discussion of Shirley Chisholm's 1968 campaign. She went after Lou Stokes, Ron Dellums, Walter Fauntroy, Bill Clay, and a number of other people that she believed were not only not supporting her, but were actively working against her. Yeah. I think there's much more to the story than that, and because I didn't see the film, I really can't go any further. Nope, enough said. I just wanted to ask if you talked to your uncle and what he had to say about it. I've not seen a statement from him, but again, it's a fascinating piece of cinema. I'll leave it at that. Our guest, Dr. Michael Fauntroy, founding director of the Race, Politics, and Policy Center at George Mason University, regular contributor to this program, who I'm always delighted to be in dialogue with. I'll talk to you soon. Mike, all the best to you, sir. Good, brother. It's always good to be with you. Talk to you later. Good to have you on. When we come forward, historian, author, professor at Columbia, Rashid Khalidi, on this so-called UN ceasefire resolution that ain't stopped nothing yet. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Donald Trump is seeking to have his Georgia election interference case dismissed on First Amendment grounds. Trump's lead attorney is arguing in court today the indictment should be thrown out because the former president's actions related to the 2020 election were political speech and advocacy protected by the First Amendment. Trump and 18 others were indicted by Fulton County District Attorney African-American Fonnie Willis for their alleged efforts to overturn Trump's 2020 election defeat in the state. Motown legend Martha Reeves has been honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The African-American singer and former member of the Detroit City Council had to raise $50,000 of the $75,000 fee for the honor, which was unveiled yesterday in Los Angeles, California. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Need an accident attorney by your side? All you got to do is call the Accident Guys.
Injured in a car accident or at work? The Accident Guys have helped over 5,000 injured clients with an impressive winning record.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers won their fifth straight, a 12-point win last night at Memphis. Rui Hachimura dropped a career-high 7 3-pointers. He finished with 32 points. Kawhi Leonard made a clutch block just before the final buzzer to help the Clippers hold on for a 1-point win at Philadelphia. Paul George had 22. One of the roads to the NCAA Men's Basketball Final Four goes through L.A. The West Regional Semifinals are today at Crypto.com. Arizona and Clemson tip off at 4 p.m., followed by North Carolina and Alabama at 6:30. Baseball is back. It's opening day today for the Dodgers and Angels. The Angels are in Baltimore. The Dodgers are at home against St. Louis. Only 2 black managers among Major League Baseball's 30 teams. Both are right here in Southern California. Ron Washington is in his first year with the Angels. This is season number 9 for Dave Roberts with the Dodgers. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
You're gonna feel a puff of air.
Jong's Optometry has set their sights on staffing up.
Try the next line. Hey, Kim, can you tell our 2 o'clock we're running 15 behind? Sorry, we're a bit backed up today.
He needs an optometric technician to keep an eye on it all.
Where are the dilation drops?
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try Dayquil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. Dayquil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, Honeylicious, power through your day medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Our guest in this half hour is Rashid Khalidi, no stranger to this program. He is a historian. He is a professor at Columbia. And he's author of the book, The 100 Years' War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance, 1917 to 2017. I'm pleased to have Professor Khalidi back on this program. Professor, how are you today, sir?
I am fine, Tavis. Thanks for having me on again.
It's good to have you on. Let me just jump right into it, make the most of these few minutes that we have here. We all saw some days ago a UN ceasefire resolution that finally passed. They've tried this a number of times, and the only reason why it passed this time is because the U.S. abstained. Before I get into what has happened or not happened since this resolution was passed, you know that when they passed this resolution, there were cheers inside the UN. Everybody went up into cheers and applause. When this ceasefire resolution was finally passed. Again, nothing has happened since then, essentially. We'll talk about that part in a moment. But what did you make of the resolution? What did you make of its passing? What did you make of the U.S. abstaining so that it did, in fact, pass?
Well, I think that it was a more political theater than actual serious attempt to change the situation on the ground, which, as you've said, hasn't really changed, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It represents a shift in the U.S. position, certainly. It represents an attempt to signal to the Netanyahu government U.S. displeasure without putting any weight behind that displeasure, of course. And I think it's an attempt to pacify the president's base, which is restive. The numbers that came out just yesterday from the Gallup poll show that overwhelming majorities of Democrats, 70-something%, are opposed to Israel's carrying out this war, and overwhelming majorities of Americans, and even larger numbers of Republicans than before. So the president has a problem that's a domestic political problem, and I think this is meant to be a signal to that base. The sad thing, of course, is that the U.S. Then said that this resolution is non-binding, which means Israel doesn't have to obey it.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of the? I'm going to use this phrase. You may want to push back on it or unpack it, and that's fine. But what do you make of what appears to be a sort of political schizophrenia when it comes to the Biden administration on this issue? To your point, they abstain so that the vote can pass. Then they say it's non-binding, so Israel ain't got to listen to it. They critique Bibi Netanyahu and say it's time to go. They use Chuck Schumer to advance that notion that it's time for new elections, et cetera, et cetera. Chuck Schumer, of course, being the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in this country. So they use Schumer to sort of advance that issue. But then we keep sending them weapons. I mean, it's back and forth, and it's hard to know where we really stand, where this administration really stands on the issue, because they say one thing and they do another, and many people can't follow that.
Well, I think that a couple things are clear. The president has an ironclad commitment to Israel, but is very unhappy with the Netanyahu government's prosecution of this war. It also has a commitment to Israel's objectives in this war. It wants to destroy Hamas, as does Israel. It wants to see a complete change in governance in the Gaza Strip, as does Israel. And as you say, it's willing to supply Israel with all the weapons that it needs to do whatever it does. On the other hand, it really is unhappy about the fact that the Israeli government is starving the people of Gaza to death. It's really unhappy about the fact that the Israeli government refuses to open up a half dozen entry points into the Gaza Strip, which would flood the region with food. It's really unhappy with the way in which the this government is refusing to lay out a vision for the future of the Gaza Strip, while at the same time encouraging extremists to talk about expelling Palestinians from the northern part of the Strip, reestablishing settlements, and basically colonizing the northern part of the Gaza Strip. So they are, I think schizophrenic is not an exaggerated way of describing it, frankly.
Mm-hmm. If you think that this move, that is to say the U.S. abstaining, so that this resolution would in fact pass, which upset Bibi Netanyahu, we'll get to that in just a second. If you think, though, this move was made by the Biden administration to placate its base, given that, as you mentioned earlier, the numbers are going in the wrong direction for Biden with a re-election facing him in the face, numbers are going in the wrong direction on this particular issue. If you think this move was done to placate the base, do you think it works?
No. I don't think that people who are watching genocide and mass starvation created by Israeli actions in real time on social media, who are the people driving the opposition to Israel's war on Gaza, I don't think they're going to be placated by a meaningless ceasefire resolution, which the Biden administration has already said has no weight. No, they will not be placated. It is an ineffectual gesture, as are the gestures made via Senator Schumer. I mean, you want to change the Israeli government. The United States changes governments all over the world. Mm-hmm. American administrations have pushed Israeli politics to the point that Israeli voters have changed their government. They did that under President George H.W. Bush in 1992. They pushed and pushed and pushed on the Shamir government. The Israelis changed their government and brought in Rabin. They've done it multiple times. It can be done. These people are inept and undecided. I mean, as you say, they're schizophrenic. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the kind of hard-nosed nastiness that people like James Baker had and other American statesmen and presidents have had. If this government is harming U.S. interests, then the United States should come out and say it. They could say things like, Israel is responsible for starvation in the Gaza Strip, and this must stop by the opening of the Erez and other checkpoints. Say that. Just say that. And you force a crisis in Israel. There are many other things they could say, which they refuse to say because, I think you're absolutely right, they're schizophrenic on this.
Yeah. What then do you make of Bibi Netanyahu's response to this vote?
Well, I think that just like the Biden administration is playing domestic politics or trying in their inept, incoherent way to play domestic politics in his much shrewder and more effective way, Netanyahu is playing Israeli domestic politics and American domestic politics. He is appealing to the pro-Israel leadership of the Democratic Party and to the entirely pro-Israel and totally opportunistic Republican Party, and undermining the president from the right in the United States while shoring up his right-wing base in Israel by pretending they want us to allow Hamas to have victory. They want us to stop punishing the killers of October 7th. I am the only person who can protect Israel and ensure that we have quote-unquote victory, never defined, and that we can pursue this war as all Israelis want us to do. This is resounding with his base in Israel. Much more than what President Biden is doing is resounding with his base here in the United States.
Yep. So the question I want to give you a chance to tackle when we come forward here in just a second is what it means. I want you to share, your views with me and with the audience about what it actually means to have a UN that passes a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire, and once that resolution passes, nothing happens. The fighting just continues. The bombs continue to drop. People continue to die. These stories are being written, by the hour. So you get the UN with all this power, apparently, to pass a ceasefire immediately, and nothing ceases. We'll talk about that part when we come forward with Columbia professor Rashid Khalidi on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Don't shave with that, son. You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops. I'm good with Gillette's Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard anyway? You know Mama hates it.
Yeah, had it since my last wet shave in 77. Got ingrown so bad, looked like I was growing a patch of new noses.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturize, so I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
We must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what politics is supposed to produce.
This election year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the place for politics, unapologetically progressive politics. And we've got two of the best and brightest to help you cut through all the noise. Weekdays at 1 p.m., it's A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nee Cordelai-Corte. And at 4 p.m., it's Areva Martin in Real Time. He's the university professor and distinguished member of the White House Correspondents Association. She's a best-selling author and Harvard-trained civil rights lawyer. And they are both here every day to help guide you through all the this year, because you know it's going to get deep. Get your politics on weekday afternoons at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. with A More Perfect Union, hosted by Dr. Nee Cordelai-Corte and Areva Martin in Real Time, only on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your flag.
Are you tired of being stuck without internet access? Connect and go with LA County Library. It's simple. Visit your local LA County Library location and borrow a hotspot for free to get Wi-Fi wherever you are.
People who come to Cricket stay with Cricket, just like our customer Jaron.
I'm the singer and guitarist in a band, and I use my Cricket phone for everything. It's basically like another band member.
Don't miss a single beat. Switch today and get a free Samsung Galaxy A14 5G. Smile, you're on Cricket.
Real customer paid for testimonial. Must bring your number to Cricket on up to a $60 a month voice plan depending on device. Select models only while supplies last. First month service charge and tax due at sale. Cricket 5G requires a compatible device and is not available everywhere. Fees, terms, and restrictions apply. See store for details.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Rashid Khalidi, professor at Columbia. Who do we indict for a ceasefire resolution that is non-binding, that does not, in fact, lead to a ceasefire? Is that an indictment of the UN, an indictment of the U.S., an indictment of Israel, an indictment of Hamas? You tell me.
Well, the United Nations is deeply flawed and has been since it was created by the victors of World War II, who gave themselves untrammeled power as permanent members of the Security Council. That's a problem that goes back to 1945. It's flawed. The other indictable, party is the U.S. government, which is saying about UN Security Council resolutions, which should be considered binding, that they are not binding when they relate to Israel. Now, there are provisions of the UN Charter. I don't want to bore your listeners with the, article this and chapter that, but there are articles of the UN Charter which can and should be implemented to force countries to obey Security Council resolutions, and the United States won't allow that to happen. So the second party that's shielding Israel here, besides the dysfunctional structure of the United Nations, is the United States itself, which acts as if it is the world. I mean, we are not the world, but the United States government acts as if it is the world, and it determines what a rules-based international order is. So the rule that the United States applies in Ukraine, that occupation is bad and should be ended immediately by international action, doesn't apply to a 56-year Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory and parts of Syria.
What do you make of that distinction, that we say one thing about the war in Ukraine, another thing about the war in Palestine?
Well, it shows that our principles are not really principles. They're completely opportunistic decisions taken on an ad hoc basis to serve policy objectives. The United States has beef with Russia. The United States opposes Russia's expansion in Europe, and therefore the United States acts through the United Nations and in other ways to try and oppose Russia. The United States is the major support and has always been of Israel. It supports what Israel does, irrespective of whether that violates international law, and it pretends that it doesn't, and irrespective of whether it harms, in fact, American interests. However you interpret U.S. interests, whether in a progressive way or in a conservative way, there's no question but that this harms U.S. interests. The United States supports it nonetheless. And when I say supports it, I don't mean rhetorical, meaningless verbiage which is nominally critical of Israel. I mean actually doing something to force Israel to stop, like changing the rhetoric, not saying Israel has a right to self-defense, we support whatever Israel does in the Gaza Strip, but saying this and this and this are violations of international humanitarian law, starving people, for example, preventing food from getting in, overcoming this mendacious Israeli claim that they're not stopping food from getting in, just saying, yes, they are stopping food from getting in, and they must stop doing that. That in and of itself would be actual policy change, unlike the verbiage that we get from the administration.
That begs the obvious question. I am not naive in asking this question, but I will pose it. The moment we come forward with Rashid Khalidi, professor at Columbia, author of the book The 100 Years War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance, 1917 to 2017, the question I will pose when we come forward, since he said it 2 times now by my count, why won't the U.S. change its verbiage? Why won't we change our rhetoric? So you stand back and you let the resolution pass, but you won't change your verbiage. You won't change your language. You won't change your public statements about what's happening there if you truly are concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Why won't you change your discourse? That for Professor Khalidi when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Heard the catchphrase that's sweeping the nation?
Jackson, Hugh, yeah.
People are saying Jackson Hugh yeah to Jackson Hewitt because they love saving money on tax prep. Do you love saving money? Then switch to Jackson Hewitt today and pay less than last year. Thousands of people have already made the switch. Why haven't you? Stop waiting and start filing. You won't get a better deal or a better catchphrase. All together now.
Jackson Hugh, yeah!
Proof of prior year payment required when filing. New clients only at participating locations through April 7th. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com.
helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Professor Rashid Khalidi, you have asked the penultimate question a couple of times during this conversation. I assume you've asked that question, those questions not at all rhetorically. So I put you on the spot now to answer your own question. Why won't the U.S. change its verbiage, adjust its language, its public discourse, its public statements and pronouncements about this war, even as they stand back and allow the resolution to go forward? Calling for an immediate ceasefire. Why not change your verbiage?
I think there's three reasons why the United States does what it does with regard to Israel. The first is that an older generation of leaders have just been brainwashed. They believe a whole set of lines coming out of Israel. And you hear the president repeat them again and again and again. Israel's security. Israel's security means Palestinian security. That's not how the president sees it. He sees Israelis as more worthy of sympathy than Palestinians. The second reason is there are a lot of people in the American government who sincerely believe that Israel is a major strategic asset. They have a hostile attitude to the Middle East. They see a country that's at war with a large part of the Middle East as an asset in an attempt to hold down the Middle East militarily. And they've seen it that way for many, many years. And finally, there are a lot of people who believe that Israeli values are consonant with American values. Well, if those values are military occupation, or if those values are degradation of people through torture and imprisonment and humiliation and checkpoints and so forth, siege, then those are American values. But people say, no, the only democracy in the Middle East, a country that's kept millions of people under military occupation for 56 years, is seen by some people in the United States as a democracy just like our democracy. I think it's closer to a Jim Crow version of American democracy than it is to the version that we supposedly have of ourselves today. And all of those three reasons, I think, are why, unfortunately, American politicians just are not willing to move to action instead of meaningless rhetoric.
I've got 2 minutes left in this conversation. Let me just ask you this. If the U.S., you made the point earlier brilliantly that the U.S. has been involved in nation-state building forever, right? We put people in and we pull people out at our will sometimes, at a whim sometimes, for that matter. But if the U.S. continues with this strategy, if you can call it that, if they continue to box Bibi Netanyahu, if they continue to make things difficult for him inside of his own country, if they continue to isolate him, never mind the fact they keep sending weapons and the money, I get all that, but if they keep, again, boxing him in, so that he at some point appears to the Israeli people to be a pariah, to be an obstacle standing in the way of whatever it is that they want, do you think that the strategy long-term will be viewed as successful if it leads to an ousting of him at some point and another way to address this crisis in the Middle East? Does that make sense?
Two quick things to say.
Sure.
We don't really have the long term. People are starving to death by the dozens, maybe soon by the hundreds. And so while it might work in the long term, we don't have the long term in terms of human life. The second thing is, what you have to really do is get Israelis to rethink their whole relationship with the Palestinians. And unfortunately, that's going to be a harder sell. I would say stop the war now by any means necessary, and then try and convince the Israelis that they have to come to terms with the Palestinians rather than trying only to use force with them. But I don't think that's something that's easy to do. You can read the Israeli press, and it's easy to see that Israelis are committed to continuing this war exactly as it's being fought, through starvation and through attacks on civilians. And the only way to change their views on that, I think, is to manage to get a ceasefire. Stop this war.
Rashid Khalidi is author of the book, The 100 Years War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance, 1917 to 2017. He is a historian and a professor at Columbia University, professor of modern Arab studies, to be exact. Professor Khalidi, good to have you on the program, sir. All the best to you. I'll talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Tavis.
Thank you for your time. When we come forward, 50 years ago this year, Richard Nixon resigned from the White House, and that signal and singular decision still resonates all these years later, particularly in an election cycle where we have persons who have violated the law potentially on the ballot. We'll talk about it for the hour when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA